You're listening to a special Halloween edition of Rob Norris Radio on TalkShoe.com. I am Rob Norris. Catch me live every Tuesday night, normally at 9 p.m., but because it's Halloween, I thought I'd do it a little later in the evening this time around. Email me anytime, robnorrisradio@live.com, and check me out on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Rob Norris Radio Show. This next story is based on fact. A local legend here in Southern California. Because there are still people who lived through this ordeal, the names have been changed to protect the innocent. It is called the Horse Country Hatchet Murder. It was a typical Saturday summer evening in Southern California. The Peters family had a guest at their countryside home in the hills near Chino. 11-year-old Matthew Wilkes, the best friend of young Anthony Peters. They had all enjoyed a cookout in the backyard, and the evening was spent playing games, watching movies. But while the Peters house was bright and full of life, little did they know what awaited them nearby. For 2 days, Kevin Booth, an escaped inmate from the local prison, holed up at a vacant house, less than 200 yards away from the Peters home. Booth, a convicted burglar and rapist, had tried to contact friends to help him to get out of Chino, but to no avail. That's when he saw an opportunity. A station wagon parked outside at the next house. It was still daylight, so Booth waited to make his move. Under cover of darkness, Booth crept quietly toward the Peters house. He got to the station wagon and tried the door. It was locked. He was going to have to get the car keys from inside the house. Booth sneaked around back, only to discover Mr. Peters smoking a cigarette on the back porch. Fearing discovery, Booth picked up a hatchet next to the woodpile and attacked Mr. Peters from behind, driving the hatchet into the back of his skull. Mr. Peters never saw it coming. He collapsed into a heap, dead. Knowing there were more people inside, Kevin Booth barged in and came after Mrs. Peters next. He drove the hatchet into her shoulder, and she fell to the floor, the hatchet protruding from her wounded body. Booth ran into the kitchen and grabbed a large knife and an ice pick. When he returned to finish Mrs. Peters off, he saw that she had managed to crawl away. He followed the trail of blood into young Anthony's room. Anthony, awakened by the commotion, first saw his gravely injured mother, then the dark figure in the doorway. He tried to scream, but Booth pulled the hatchet from Mrs. Booth's body and clubbed Anthony with it. Anthony's friend Matthew, terrified by the attacker, tried to run away, only to get tackled to the floor and have the ice pick driven through his leg, pinning him down. Booth returned to young Anthony and slit his throat with the knife. Anthony collapsed, staring at his mother's lifeless eyes, unable to move. Booth took the knife and finished off Matthew, stabbing him 12 times. By this time, Anthony's little sister Vanessa, who had been asleep, emerged from her room and screamed at the carnage. Booth lunged at her with the hatchet, brutally hacking away until she was silent. His job finished, Kevin Booth went to Mrs. Peters' purse for the keys to the station wagon. He drove off, leaving behind a grotesque scene of death. But not everyone was dead. Young Anthony, despite the slit in his throat, managed to stay alive until he was discovered late the next morning by Matthew's father, Brad Wilkes. When the police arrived on the scene, it was quickly determined that Kevin Booth was the lead suspect. He was apprehended by the authorities about 2 months later off the coast of Oxnard, California. Young Anthony, the lone survivor of the brutal massacre, testified against Booth, who was convicted of 4 counts of murder and sentenced to be executed. The years have not been kind to the once lovely country home where the Peters family lived. It stands vacant to this day, completely boarded up and surrounded by a chain-link fence. Weeds and brush have taken over the once lush front lawn. The swimming pool in the back is now a crumbling hole in the ground, and the statue in the front yard fountain is all but gone. It has been suggested that the victim's blood is still all over the walls and floor of the house, and every now and then nearby residents claim they can hear the blood-curdling scream of little Vanessa Peters coming from the house. As for Anthony, he is still alive, and he too can still hear that scream. Just time for one more quick story here on my special Halloween edition of Rob Norris Radio on TalkShoe.com. This one is a legend from my own hometown of Yorba. It is the legend of the Pink Lady. You see, my hometown of Yorba is not without its ghostly legend. The city was founded by Don Bernardo Yorba back in the early 1800s. His own father was granted a large parcel of land in what is now most of Orange County. The Yorba Hacienda stood at the present-day location of the Fairmont Hill townhomes along Esperanza Road. Like many wealthy families, the Yorbas had a private cemetery too. But unlike the hacienda, which is long gone, the cemetery is still there. It sits currently in the center of a neighborhood known as Woodgate Park, at Esperanza Road and Fairlyn Avenue, just west of the site of the old hacienda. Opened in 1834, it is the oldest private cemetery in the state of California, and over 400 members of Yorba's extended family were laid to rest there over the next 100 years. One of those souls was that of 15-year-old Alvina Yorba de los Reyes. Legend has it that young Alvina was riding in a buggy on her way home from a ball on June 15, 1910. Alvina was one of the most popular girls at the dance, especially since she was wearing her brand new pink cotillion gown on that fateful night. On the way home on nearby Kellogg Drive, the buggy was involved in an accident and young Alvina was thrown, hitting her head on the ground. She later died of her injuries. Since she was a member of the Yorba family, she was naturally buried at the Yorba family cemetery, where she is still interred today. Now, legend has it that Alvina's spirit appears every other June 15th, on even-numbered years, wearing that pink dress within the confines of the old Yorba cemetery. Residents who live in the surrounding neighborhood of that family plot still report sightings of the Pink Lady to this day. When she does appear, she roams the cemetery, apparently checking on the graves of her mother and grandmother. Others claim she carries a warning to teens everywhere to be careful, lest a fate like hers should befall them. And still, other visitors claim that even on nights when she is not supposed to appear, they get a feeling that someone is watching them from inside the locked gates of the graveyard. This is a special edition of Rob Norris Radio on TalkShoe.com, and it is now midnight. It is time to bid a happy Halloween to one and all. Please do yourself a favor. Be safe. Watch out for the kids. And don't take unwrapped candies from strangers. We bid you adieu on this special edition of Rob Norris Radio. Have yourself a fun and safe Halloween. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Don't go crazy, you know. Ha 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 ha!